I used to think that distance protected me from certain things, from family drama, from unsolicited advice, from the subtle but sharp judgments that often come wrapped in smiles and polite voices. When my husband, Daniel, and I moved out to Portland, Oregon 5 years ago, far from both of our families, it felt like freedom. We weren't running away. Exactly, we both had good jobs lined up, a quiet 2-bedroom house near Mount Tabor, and dreams of building our life on our own terms. It felt peaceful, intentional, like the start of a life that belonged only to us. My family is back in Johannesburg, thousands of miles and 2 continents away. Time zones, expensive flights, and international holidays mean I don't see them more than once every couple of years. But emotionally, I'm still tied to them. My mother and I talk every Sunday evening. My sisters are on a WhatsApp group that buzzes almost daily. Even though they're far, I've never felt out of touch. Daniel's family, on the other hand, live in Boise, about a 6-hour drive away. Not next door, but close enough for them to visit us regularly during holidays, birthdays, and long weekends. We've seen them often enough that I know the way his mother pinches the bridge of her nose when she disagrees but won't say it. I know how his father's hugs last just 2 seconds too long. I know the way they talk about Daniel in a tone that mixes pride with possessiveness. And until recently, I thought we were fine. Maybe not super close, but cordial, respectful, the kind of in-law relationship you hope for. But now everything feels different. I'm 8.5 months pregnant with our first child, and there's this shift. I can't quite explain, something in my gut, an instinct maybe, or a voice that's grown louder since the baby started kicking. I feel protective in a way I never anticipated. Like I've grown this invisible perimeter around myself and our home, and I'm terrified of it being breached. Maybe it started with my birthday. It was June 12th, not a milestone birthday or anything, just another year added quietly to the list. I wasn't expecting a big celebration, especially this late in the pregnancy. But what I did expect, perhaps naively, was a text, a simple happy birthday in the family group chat, something light, even just an emoji. But the day came and went and nothing. No message from his parents, not even a passing acknowledgement. I tried not to care. I really did. I told myself they were probably busy, or it slipped their mind, or maybe they thought they'd already said something, but I couldn't stop thinking about how every birthday that came before mine got the full family fanfare. Daniel's brother's wife got a post and a message and a phone call 2 months earlier. Even Daniel's distant cousin, who lives in Utah and hasn't seen the family in 3 years, got a group photo collage and birthday wishes. But me, silence. And what made it worse was that just a week before, they had come to visit, spent the weekend with us. I cooked. Despite the swelling in my ankles, Daniel grilled outside. His mother commented on how small our house looked now that we were expecting a baby. His father asked if we thought about moving. I smiled, nodded, and tried not to let it get under my skin. But when they left and my birthday passed without a word, I couldn't help but wonder, was this intentional? A few days before that, Daniel told me almost in passing that his parents had expressed concerns about one of my decisions regarding the baby. I'd chosen not to have a traditional baby shower. I wanted something small, intimate, just a brunch with a few close friends from work. No games, no registry, no social media announcements. It was a personal decision, one that felt right to me. But apparently, his mother didn't agree. She said it seems cold. Daniel told me one night as we lay in bed, like you're shutting people out. Maybe I was, maybe I am, but it didn't feel cold to me. It felt private, sacred, even. And suddenly, the missed birthday felt less like a fluke and more like a message, a warning shot. I didn't say anything to Daniel right away. I didn't want to sound hormonal or paranoid, but the feeling stuck with me, growing heavier by the day. And then came the talk of them visiting after the baby is born. Just for a few days, his mother had said during their last visit, we'll help out, give you a break. It sounded generous, kind even, but all I could think about was our tiny house. 1 bathroom, 1 small guest room that had already been converted into a half-finished nursery with boxes of baby clothes and a changing table still in pieces. The thought of sharing that space, of trying to breastfeed and recover and sleep with 2 more adults in the house, it made my chest tighten. I could already see it. The whispered conversations, the unsolicited advice, the way she'd peek into our laundry, our fridge, our lives, the way she'd comment to her sisters later that I looked tired, or that I wasn't holding the baby right, or that the house wasn't as clean as it used to be. I've seen her do it before. She gossips, not cruelly, maybe, but consistently. She once told me in confidence that Daniel's cousin had gained too much weight during her pregnancy and was just letting herself go. Another time, she said my accent made me sound worldly, but in a way that didn't feel like a compliment. And I know if she stays here, even just for a weekend, she'll take what she sees and turn it into stories. Stories that spread. I want to say no, I want to draw a line, but every time I try to bring it up with Daniel, I freeze. I hear his voice in my head saying they're just excited, that they mean well, that they're family, but what about me? What about the fact that I'm the one going through this, that I'm the one who's about to have her body torn open for this child, that I'm the one who'll be waking up every 2 hours, bleeding and sore and sleep deprived? Do I not get to choose who's in my space? Am I just an incubator now? That word keeps echoing in my head, incubator. And as the due date inches closer, the fear gets louder, not of childbirth, but of what happens after, of who I'll be allowed to be once I'm a mother, and who will be allowed to decide that for me. The night I broke down, it wasn't dramatic. There were no shouting matches, crashes, no slammed doors, no long, sobbing collapse in the hallway. It happened in the most ordinary way, quietly, invisibly, in a Target parking lot under a gray, drizzling sky. It was July 3rd, just over a week after my birthday. I had gone out to pick up a few last-minute things for the baby nipple cream, burp cloths, a box of nursing pads. I was moving slower now. Everything took longer. My feet were puffy, my back ached constantly, and my center of gravity felt like it had relocated to somewhere behind my kneecaps. But I liked running errands. It gave me a sense of control. That day, I stood in the baby aisle, staring at a pack of pacifiers for nearly 10 minutes, frozen with indecision. Silicone or rubber, orthodontic or not, blue or clear or yellow. And then, out of nowhere, I started crying. Just a few tears at first, but then the kind of silent crying that makes your whole face crumple. My hands shook as I shoved the pacifiers into the basket. I made it to the car before the sobbing started. Big, gulping breaths. I couldn't stop. My stomach tightened, and for a second, I panicked, thinking something was wrong with the baby. But it wasn't the baby, it was everything else. Because just the night before, Daniel had told me something that unspooled everything I'd been holding together. They booked their flights, he said casually as he got into bed beside me. Mom and Dad, they're coming a few days after the due date. He said it like it was the most normal thing in the world, like I should be relieved. I turned to him slowly, my hand resting on the curve of my belly. You told them we don't have space, right? They'll manage, he shrugged. They said they don't mind sleeping on the couch. They just want to be here to help. Help. I wanted to scream. Help to them meant sitting on our only couch while I bled and leaked and tried to learn how to swaddle a screaming newborn. Help meant telling me to rest while silently judging everything I did. Help meant giving the baby formula when I was struggling to breastfeed because you turned out just fine. I looked at Daniel, my husband, my partner, the person I had chosen to build a life with, and I felt something sharp in my chest. Betrayal. Not because he invited them, but because he didn't ask me. Because he didn't think to. He saw my face and he said, babe, they're excited. It's their first grandchild. They're not trying to upset you. I didn't say anything that night. I just turned away and stared at the wall until sleep found me hours later. But in that Target parking lot, it all came back. The missed birthday, the undermining comments, the assumption that my feelings didn't need to be consulted, that I was just the vessel, the caretaker, the gateway. Not once in the last 2 months had they called me. Not once had they asked how I was doing, how I was feeling, how I was sleeping, eating, surviving. But the second the baby was mentioned, the plan started. Flights were booked, bags packed, roles assigned. And in that moment, sitting alone in the car, I realized I wasn't being paranoid. I wasn't being hormonal. I wasn't being cold. I was being erased. Piece by piece, decision by decision, I was becoming invisible. A mother before I was even allowed to be a person. That evening, after wiping my face and driving home in silence, I finally said something. Daniel was making tea in the kitchen when I walked in, my shopping bags still dangling from my fingers. I don't want them staying here. He turned around, eyebrows raised. What? When the baby comes, I don't want anyone staying in the house. I want privacy. I want space. I need time to adjust without anyone watching me. He set the kettle down slowly. You said it was fine before. I didn't say anything, I corrected. I wasn't asked. He looked stunned, genuinely confused. And in that moment, I realized how far apart we were standing, not just in the kitchen, but in the experience of what was about to happen. I get that you're nervous, he said, but they're family. They just want to help. I shook my head, feeling a mix of exhaustion and rage. It's not about being nervous. It's about being respected. This is my body, my recovery, our baby, our house. And if they want to be part of that, they need to understand that I am not just a background character in this story. He didn't respond right away. I think he was trying to process it, trying to not say something he couldn't take back, but he was also trying not to make waves with his parents. Can we talk about this tomorrow? He asked eventually, but I was done waiting. That night, I sent a message in the family group chat. I drafted it 3 times before hitting send. Hi everyone, I just wanted to share a quick update. After a lot of thought, Daniel and I have decided not to have any overnight guests at the house after the baby is born. We really appreciate everyone's excitement and love, but we need time to adjust privately. We'd still love to see you all once we've had a bit of time to settle in. I put Daniel's name in it. Even though I was the one who wrote it, I needed it to sound united. I needed to sound strong. The message was read within minutes. No reply. Daniel stared at his phone, then at me. You didn't even run it by me, he said. You didn't run the flights by me either, I replied, my voice steady. Silence. The next morning, his mother replied, of course, we understand. Let us know when a good time would be to visit. It looked polite, respectful, but I could read the subtext. I could feel the coldness in every word. And so could Daniel. He didn't say much after that. We went about our week. He was quiet, thoughtful, but I noticed the distance, the weight of unspoken disappointment hanging between us. But for the first time in weeks, I slept through the night because I had finally taken a stand. Even if it made me the villain in someone else's story, even if it made things messy, even if it made Daniel look at me differently. I wasn't just a mother in waiting, I was still me, and I deserved to be seen. The days after I sent that message were quiet, but not in the peaceful way I had hoped. It was the kind of silence that feels like everyone's holding their breath, waiting for someone to say the wrong thing so they can finally let out everything they've been bottling up. Daniel didn't bring it up again, not directly, but I felt it in the small ways. The way he stopped sharing updates from his parents with me, the way he lingered on his phone a little longer during their their Sunday calls. The way he replied "just tired" when I asked if he was okay, then immediately changed the subject. We still moved through the routine of our life, cooking dinner together, folding laundry, prepping the hospital bag, but something had shifted. It was like we were trying to pretend that everything was still fine, but neither of us believed it anymore. I spent a lot of time alone in those days. Mornings blurred into afternoons while I sat on the couch in oversized maternity leggings, rubbing circles on my belly and scrolling through parenting forums that only made me more anxious. Everyone had an opinion, and none of them matched mine. Breastfeed on demand. Stick to a schedule. Don't co-sleep. Co-sleeping saved my sanity. My brain felt like it was wrapped in cotton heavy, slow, overloaded with conflicting advice. And then, out of nowhere, I started nesting like my life depended on it. One afternoon, I tore through the baby room and completely reorganized it. I refolded every onesie, threw out packaging we didn't need, rearranged diapers by size and type. I got on my hands and knees to scrub baseboards I hadn't looked at in years. I vacuumed the inside of drawers. I labeled baskets. I even deep cleaned the fridge, tossing out things with expiration dates that weren't even that close. It wasn't really about cleanliness, it was about control. It was about trying to carve out a space in the chaos that felt truly mine, untouched by opinions, unsullied by judgment. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from friends and coworkers checking in, offering to drop off freezer meals or come by after the baby arrived. I replied to a few, left others unread. I wasn't trying to isolate myself, but I didn't want to be placated either. I wanted anyone to say, "You're right, you're allowed to feel this way," because the guilt was creeping in. The guilt that I had set a boundary and was now being punished for it. A week after I sent the message to the group chat, Daniel's sister, Emily, texted me directly. We weren't particularly close, but she was always kind. She lived in San Diego, was a few years older than Daniel, and had 2 kids of her own. Her message was short. "Hey, just wanted to say I totally get where you're coming from. After my first, I didn't want anyone around either. Hope you're doing okay." I stared at it for a long time before replying. "Thank you. That means a lot more than you know." That one text became a tiny lifeline. Proof that I wasn't being dramatic, that I wasn't the only one who had ever felt this strange cocktail of love and rage, joy, and fear. It reminded me that motherhood wasn't some soft pastel filtered journey. It was raw, messy, unapologetic. Daniel, meanwhile, seemed torn in two. I could see it in the way he looked at me, like he was trying to understand, but didn't quite know how, like he was caught between the woman he married and the parents who raised him. One night, about a week before my due date, we sat on the back porch while the sun set behind the trees. I had swollen ankles propped on a chair and a glass of ice water sweating in my hand. The silence between us felt thicker than ever. "I just don't want them to think you hate them," he finally said, almost in a whisper. I didn't look at him. I watched a squirrel dart across the fence and disappear. "I don't hate them," I said, "but I'm not doing this to make them comfortable. I'm doing this to survive it." He didn't respond. And I realized in that moment that we were speaking 2 different languages. He wanted peace. I wanted space. He wanted everyone to feel included. I wanted to not feel erased. And the baby wasn't even here yet. My due date came and went. No baby, just more Braxton Hicks contractions that felt like the universe playing a cruel joke. Every morning I woke up hoping today would be the day. Every night I went to bed disappointed and achy. And then, finally, on July 23rd at 2:42 a.m., my water broke. Everything after that was a blur. The frantic rush to the hospital, the bright lights of the delivery room, the nurses with gentle hands and serious voices. The pain came in waves. There were moments I thought I might split apart, but then there he was. Oliver James, 6 pounds, 11 ounce, perfect. They placed him on my chest and the world went silent. I cried the way I hadn't cried in years. Not from fear, not from pain, but from something so overwhelming I couldn't even name it. Daniel cried too. He kissed my forehead and whispered, "You did it." But even in that perfect moment, something lingered in the back of my mind. Not regret, but an awareness, a knowing that the fallout hadn't ended, that outside that hospital room, things were still broken. The text started rolling in an hour later. Daniel's parents messaged him first, then his cousins, then his mother finally sent me a message directly. "Congratulations, he looks just like Daniel. We're so happy for you both. No, how are you feeling? No, you did great." Just a reminder that he wasn't mine alone, that his identity had already been claimed. I stared at that message for a long time, then locked my phone and turned it face down on the bedside table. Because in that moment, I wasn't just someone's wife. I wasn't just a mother. I was a woman who had clawed her way through fear and doubt and pain to bring a life into this world, and no one could take that from me, even if they tried. Coming home from the hospital felt like stepping into a new life wearing a costume that didn't quite fit. I was me, but not. I was raw, stitched together, sleep deprived, aching in places I didn't know could ache. My body felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else. My mind was foggy, my emotions constantly in flux. One moment I was crying at the way Oliver curled his tiny fingers around mine, and the next I was sobbing into my pillow because the ice packs for my stitches weren't cold enough. And through all of it, the silence from Daniel's parents thundered in the background. They didn't call, didn't ask when they could come meet their grandson. It wasn't like them. In the past, they'd always hovered texting, calling, checking in, but now it was as if they were waiting for me to cave, waiting for Daniel to fix things, waiting for their chance to say, "We told you so." Daniel tiptoed around it. I saw the text texts he responded to without showing me. He kept their calls short, vague. He didn't ask them to visit, but he also didn't bring it up with me again. Part of me appreciated that, but another part of me, the part that was still bleeding and learning how to latch a newborn onto my cracked, sore nipples, wanted him to fight for me. To say to his parents, "She just gave birth to our son. Show her some damn respect." But he didn't. Instead, he held Oliver at 3 a.m. when I couldn't stop crying. He rubbed my back while I sat on the edge of the bed, wondering if I was failing already. He cleaned the breast pump parts without being asked. And maybe that was his way of apologizing, of choosing me, in the only way he knew how. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after we brought Oliver home, I got a call from my mom. She had stayed quiet throughout the whole situation. We talked about the birth, of course, but she hadn't said a word about the in-laws. That day, though, her voice was calm but direct. "Are they coming?" she asked. I told her no, that we hadn't invited them yet. She paused. "Good. You need this time." She wasn't the type to interfere, but her words gave me strength. She'd done this 3 times, in fact, in a foreign country, with limited support. And even though she was half a world away, she understood what I needed without me having to explain it. That night, I started writing a letter. Not a dramatic, angry one, not something meant to shame or accuse, but a clear, honest, measured letter to Daniel's parents. I wrote it during one of Oliver's short naps, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of half-cold tea and a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I told him how I felt about the missed birthday, the unsolicited opinions, the lack of acknowledgement after the birth. I told them that I loved Daniel deeply and that I wanted Oliver to grow up knowing his grandparents. But I also told them that I wasn't going to disappear just because I became a mother, that this house, this space, this child, it wasn't just theirs by blood, it was mine by fire. I read the letter to Daniel before sending it. He didn't say much when I finished, just nodded slowly, like something inside him finally clicked. "They didn't mean to hurt you," he said. "I know," I replied. "But they did." He asked if I wanted him to be the one to send it. I told him no, this needed to come from me. I emailed it the next morning. No response that day or the next. A full week passed in silence. And then, finally, an email from his mother. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't even particularly warm, but it was honest. She admitted that they had felt shut out, that they were hurt, I didn't want them there, that they weren't used to being told no, but she also said something I didn't expect. "I realize now that we didn't ask how you were doing. We focused so much on the baby that we forgot you were the one bringing him into the world. That was wrong." I read that sentence over and over again. They weren't coming immediately, that much was clear, but the door was cracked open now. There was room for healing, not for pretending everything was fine, but for rebuilding something that could one day become strong. A few days later, Daniel and I went on our first walk around the block with Oliver in his stroller. The air was warm, late August. I remember the way the trees rustled above us, the smell of fresh cut grass, the sound of our shoes on the sidewalk. We didn't talk much, just walked together. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a strange sense of peace, not because everything was fixed, but because I had reclaimed something I didn't even know I'd lost. My voice, my space, my right to be the main character in my own story. Oliver is 3 months old now. As I sit here writing this with one hand, the other gently rocking his bassinet with my foot, the house is quiet, finally. The sun is pushing through the windows just enough to paint soft gold across the floor, and I can hear the muffled hum of a neighbor's lawnmower somewhere down the block. It's peaceful in the kind of way I didn't think peace could exist anymore, not after everything. So much has changed, and yet I still sometimes wake up unsure of who I am. There are moments, strange little flashes, when I catch myself in the mirror and don't recognize the woman staring back, the one with the messy top knot, sleep-deprived eyes, and milk stains on her oversized t-shirt, the one whose body still hasn't quite gone back to being her own. But then I look down at Oliver, nestled in the crook of my arm like a secret I get to keep, and I remember I built this. I earned every part of it. A few weeks ago, Daniel's parents came to visit. We planned it carefully. I made it clear they'd need to stay at a hotel. Daniel backed me up this time, gently but firmly. They arrived with gifts, casseroles, and for the first time, I can remember an actual softness. His mom seemed nervous when she walked in, which surprised me. She hugged Daniel, then hesitated when she turned to me. "May I?" she asked, arms outstretched not for me, but for Oliver. I nodded. She took him like he was made of glass. Her voice cracked when she whispered, "He's beautiful." For a few minutes, we just stood there in the living room, the air thick with all the words we hadn't said. But it wasn't tense, it was respectful. She asked questions this time about how I was feeling, about how the labor went, about breastfeeding, which I was still struggling with. She didn't give advice, she just listened. That night, after they left to check in at their hotel, Daniel and I sat on the porch again. It felt different this time. He reached for my hand, and I let him take it. "They've changed," he said. I nodded, but I didn't agree right away. I needed more than one visit to believe it, but I also realized that it wasn't really about them changing. It was about me becoming someone who didn't need their permission to set boundaries. Someone who didn't feel guilty for protecting her space, even if it made her unpopular. Motherhood didn't just give me Oliver, it gave me a sharper edge. It gave me permission to demand more, not just from others, but from myself. I don't think Daniel and I will ever see this situation the same way. There are still times when I catch him choosing his words words carefully, afraid I might take offense. And there are times I wonder if he wishes I had just smiled more, gone along with what everyone expected, kept the peace like a good daughter-in-law. But I know this. He sees me now. Maybe not fully, maybe not with the depth I need him to, not yet. But he sees that I'm not just Oliver's mother or his wife. I'm someone who will draw lines in the sand even when it's uncomfortable, even when it hurts, because no one else will do it for me. Sometimes I still think about that day in the Target parking lot, the quiet sobbing, the way my hands shook over something as stupid as pacifiers, and I realize now it wasn't about pacifiers at all. It was about that split in my identity, that seismic crack between the person I had always been and the woman I was becoming. No one talks about how motherhood breaks you before it builds you. They don't tell you that it's possible to feel both powerful and invisible at the same time, that you can hold a baby in your arms and feel like a ghost in your own life, that you can love your child more than anything and still long for the version of yourself that didn't always come second. But I see her now, that version of me, not behind me, but beside me, watching me become someone new, someone fuller. And I know she'd be proud. Proud that I didn't shrink to keep the peace. Proud that I spoke up when it would have been easier to stay quiet. Proud that I didn't let other people's expectations dictate what this chapter of my life would look like. Someday, Oliver will be old enough to understand the story of how he came into this world. I don't think I'll tell him every detail, not about the tension or the silence or the emails, but I will tell him that his mother fought for herself when it would have been easier not to. That I built a home where my voice mattered even when it shook. And when he grows up and has to choose between pleasing others or protecting his peace, I hope he chooses the latter. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Boundaries are not walls, they're doors. And sometimes you have to close them gently, firmly, and without apology before anyone learns to knock.